So today's share is going to be on the subject of Hakhel. And by learning Hakhel, specifically if you want to open up the Rebbe's Mechtavim, the Rebbe's Sichos on Hakhel, there are many, many interesting chidushim. The Rebbe is also there. Hakhel is a subject that wasn't really touched upon, and by daily Yisrael. So the Rebbe Pashat goes through different inyanim. For example, what age were the taf? So the Rebbe goes through all the mefarshim that tell us what age were the children who came to Hakhel and Beis Hamikdash. And the Rebbe sometimes the Rebbe tries to make a consensus of the mefarshim. The Rebbe always tries to find even the youngest, even a pregnant woman. But today we're not going to get into the hard, tough stuff. The idea of today is to go through the basic inyan of Hakhel and the practicality, the practical thing that the Rebbe wants us to do for Hakhel, and maybe one or two minus of the Rebbe showing the importance of Hakhel. So we're going to start off just showing the importance of Hakhel. Then we'll get into the mitzvah. What is the mitzvah? And then we'll get into what is the mitzvah. What is the Rebbe's campaign of Hakhel? So it was 1981. The end of 1981 was Tashim Mem Aleph was a Shnas Hakhel, just like this year. And they say it was Shabbos in the Elul. And in the Sikha, the Rebbe is talking in 770 for bringing. He asks a question that was asked by one of the Bachrim. At that period of time, and so too it started around that year, a year earlier, that any Lubavitcher would write, if they had questions on the Rebbe's talks and the Rebbe's Sichos, they would write it up in a certain booklet called Hatzvi-Bais, and they would discuss it there. And if someone had an answer, they would write the next week. Every week this would come out, or every 2 weeks. So in one of these booklets, there was a bacher who asked, where does the name Shnas Hakhel come from? It looks like the Rebbe is the one who started it. And how could he even call it Shnas Hakhel? How could he use this name? So to explain the question, Shnas Hakhel, if you Google Shnas Hakhel, if you do a History of Hakhel search in Shnas Hakhel, the Rebbe is the first one who started Shnas Hakhel, started the name. Even it wasn't even in the first 10 years of the Rebbe in the Nesius, I'm almost sure the Rebbe it wasn't used. Not even, I think it was only the first time was in like Chav Zayin, in like the third Hakhel of the Rebbe's Nesius, or the third Hakhel. And the Rebbe didn't explain. The Rebbe said, this is a year of Hakhel, this is a year of assembly. So this guy asked, this bacher asked, what? You have it even. Okay, amazing. Oh, and he said, who is this person? Is his father? Is the one who asked the question. His father and someone else. It was back and forth. The Rebbe quotes two Hatzvi-Bais. Wow. It's Rabbi Munshine, his father. So the question is, because what is Hakhel? Hakhel is that on the second day, the first day of Chol Hamoed, the king, in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, the king comes, and all the Yidden have to come to the Beis Hamikdash, and the king reads from the Torah. It happens once a year. Imagine calling the year Shnas Shavuos, or Shnas Birchas Achama, right? Because once in 20 in that year, you did Birchas Achama. So Shnas Hakhel happens once a year. So that person who wrote the question answered it. And his answer was, he said, I found another, when it comes to every 50 years, Mem Aleph, Vaschan and Mem Aleph. And it happened once every 50 years in time of the Beis Hamikdash. There was something called Shnas HaYevel, the year of Yevel, which was the time when slaves were able to, every 50 years, people who bought slaves, they were free. There was a lot of halachas, a lot of laws. And in that period of time, the entire year was called Shnas HaYevel. What? Yeah. The entire year is called Shnas HaYevel. So the Rebbe, so the guy said, look, I have a good example. Even though Yevel was just in the beginning of the year, it was only on Rosh Hashanah. On Yom Kippur, they would blow the shofar. Yevel means blowing the shofar. They blow the shofar only on Rosh Hashanah, only on Yom Kippur. And the entire year is called Yovel. Even Elul is called Shnas Yovel. So too Shnas Hakhel. So someone asked, so next week a bacher asked, what's the comparison? There's halachas in Yovel. The entire year there are different halachas for Yovel. It doesn't just happen once a year. The entire year there's halachas of the year of Yovel. And Hakhel, there's nothing special about Elul of Hakhel. Api halacha, there's nothing special about it. So how can you compare? So the Rebbe answered, and the Rebbe answered in that sukkah. Since then, the Rebbe took that answer and wrote it up as a long footnote and edited it, and put it into a letter that he wrote. But here the Rebbe gives it a cliff note of it, in page 1, footnote 8. This is years later. Yeah.
He addressed it then as well?
That's when he addressed it. Yeah. He answered the whole thing. What? But was gaan er normaal? Yeah. What? In a Bilti Mugazah, yeah. And since then, the Rebbe quotes it many times. And here it's in short. This is the Rebbe's answer, answering the Bacher, saying, how can you compare Shnas HaYovel to Shnas Hakhel? Yeah, Yovel, there are different halachas that happen during Yovel. How can you compare it to Hakhel, where there's nothing special besides on Sukkot? So footnote 8, the Chol Hashana Kula, the entire year Nikes Hashem mitzvahs Hakhel, B'Chag Sukkos, which happened on Chag Sukkos, Al Derech, just like Haloshin Shnas HaYovel, Shekol Hashana Nikra, Hashem Tkiya Shefer Diyam HaKippurim. Shnas HaYovel, Yovel means blowing of the Shefer. It doesn't mean the halachas of Cheros. The year of Shnas HaYovel, not called Shnas HaCheros, or Shnas HaShmitas, different things, Shmitas Karka. Called Shnas Yovel, the year of blowing of the shofar. The blowing of the shofar only happened once, only on Yom Kippur in that period of time. And from Dasvagen, with all that, it's still the entire year was called Yovel. So too, the Rebbe says that the Rebbe decided that the Rebbe is one who initiated it, that the entire year, we'll find out why, is called Hakhel, even though it only in halacha and time of the Beis Mikdash should only happen on Sukkot.
Yeah, I'm at home and I just
Now we're going to go on page 1.
class on
so we're going to discuss it. Yeah, we'll discuss it. We'll discuss it. We're not going to read everything here. We'll discuss it soon. I'm going to jump into it soon.
And it's out.
Good question. So on page 1, we're going to read the first paragraph, where it brings out. The Rebbe explains the importance of what he wants us to do in Shnas Hakhel, not really practically, but more in the sense of the spirit. In dem kommt zu a spezielle Hadgashe Unterstreichung mit dem was heintige Jahr des Shnas Hakhel. This year is the Shnas Hakhel. A year was zeichnet sich aus mit der Aveda. This year, the service, how we serve the Eibishter, the Aveda we're supposed to do, is Hakhel as Ha'am, Ha'anashim V'ataf, Laman Yishmul Man Yilmud V'Yaros Hashem Elekechem Yishamru Lasis. It's called Divrei Torah Hazeis Kol Hayavim Asher Atam Chaim Al Ha'adam. That we're supposed to gather Yidden together, men, women, and children.
How can be compared to Yovel?
In order to strengthen our commitment to the Eibishter and learn His Torah, that we're going to serve the Eibishter better. Where is this psukim written in the Torah, which is everlasting? Just case, and now the Rebbe paraphrases what it means that Torah is everlasting. As allen Jani Aveda von dem Jahr darfen durchgehen dem Schar und sein durchgenommen mit der Geist von Hakhel. That we just explained that the reason when I say Shnas Hakhel, what does it mean? I want that everything this year should be through the Shar. Shar means the gate. Everything should go through the gate and through the spirit of Hakhel. What does the gate mean? So the Rebbe in footnote 11 sends you to a Sefer HaSichos of his following all the Friedrich Rebbe until the Kutei Deburim. So if you turn the page, on page 2, we opened up the footnotes where the Rebbe explained what a shar is.
So I have to find out from Rabbi Levi Raskin. They're recording it. Ask him for the recording.
So it starts off like this. In Chassidus is voran ezes wie herabzunehmen mit dem Timtum HaMoyach. And Chassidus gives ways. People who have struggle, something called Timtum HaMoyach, that their mind is stuffed. Whatever Chassidus explains exactly what that means. Also, people they're very coarse, but more coarse intellectually. Okay. So Chassidus gives different ways on how to fix that and how to take it away. Ein von die Eitzes is durch Zeh Yishal Mitzvah Bechlal V'zei shel hider mitzvah b'frat.
Parshas
One of the
Shavua,
ways of doing so is
this
by
month.
literally sweating and doing a mitzvah, meaning doing it fully, investing in the mitzvah, specifically investing in being mahater and beautifying the mitzvah. And then the Rebbe continues. The Rebbe at Gezak, the Alter Rebbe said, Avich v'mahave zahir tfei. I think it's Alter Rebbe or it's Rebbe. I think it's Alter Rebbe.
Yeah, but many times you don't see it.
And the Alter Rebbe explains as follows. There's a Gemara that says, that asks a question. Your father, and what was he most careful? In which mitzvah was he most careful? So the word zahir means careful. But zahir, the Alter Rebbe translated, zahir heist leichten, means to lighten, to brighten up. Es steht kiner mitzvah, a mitzvah leichten. When you do a mitzvah shines. Jeder neshama hat a mitzvah pratis, was die neshama is ihrer Veda in der mitzvah. Every neshama in this world has one from the 613 mitzvahs, has one specific mitzvah that it's Aveda, that this neshama is here to do specifically that mitzvah. Das heißt, as the mitzvah is kemoi, shar was ayoda gain dur kol ha-mitzvahs was
You have to find out what he's
by
reading.
this year doing this mitzvah, if it's tefillin, if I'll give an example in a minute of what he means. Like for example, for Yid, he is extra special in mitzvah tefillin. This mitzvah is his shar, is his gate. By him, everything is about tefillin. By him, it's what shines. It's his mitzvah that shines. Oh, that person, he's remembered, for example. Oh, that guy, he was specifically in tzedakah. This guy was specifically in learning Torah. Kamoshem etzinu the echad mahade b'mitzvah tefillin, Shabbos, pidin shvuin, limudat Torah, knasas erchim, hainish mekayim kol mitzvahs. Rakshe b'mitzvah zehu mahade b'yeser. So this person is a person, for example, that he's known always have an open home. He has a knasas erchim. So he's a knasas erchim guy. He puts his phone every day. He does all other mitzvahs too. But where's he? What's making, when you see his face, what's he shining? Yeah? And when you meet him in the streets, when he's doing other mitzvahs, what do you see? You see a chnasus archim. V'zehu avuch b'mahavi zahir tfei. In vos bara mitzvah tegeshaint mer. So the Alter Rebbe explains this Gemara. In your father, with which mitzvah did he shine?
I'm surprised now they said yes.
So going back to our thing, the Rebbe wants that this year, Shnas Hakhel, we should be shining with the mitzvah of Hakhel, with the idea of Hakhel, and everything. This should be our main focus, and this is what should be our hiddur, and what we're giving ourselves investing into. So everything we do should be in that spirit, and should have to at least have a connection to Hakhel. Then I brought two more pieces on this page where you see the Rebbe is asking very strongly to either be, the Rebbe uses the word be a Hakhel Yid, or he wants it to be sturming, that every year to get involved. Okay, now we're going to get next page. It doesn't have a page number, but it's page number 3. We're going to talk about, in short, the mitzvah of Hakhel. This page gives everything, the crux, goes through all the sechos of the Rebbe in one paragraph of what is the main idea of Hakhel. We'll start with the psukim, the first 3 psukim. The simple psukim of Hakhel is written in the Torah and the end of Vayelach. Some people, by mistake, call it the last mitzvahs of the Torah. It's actually the last mitzvahs asay of the Torah. There are mitzvahs leis asay in the Torah also afterwards. But these are the last mitzvahs, the last 2 mitzvahs leis asay of the Torah. Mitzvahs asay of the Torah are Hakhel and to write a sefer Torah. They were said on the Rebbe points out, said on the 120th birthday of Moshe Rabbeinu, the day he passed away, which actually has a connection to us because this year the Rebbe's 120th birthday. So the first pasuk, v'yitzav Moshe isam limer mikei sheva shanim b'mayit shnasa shmita b'chag Sukkos. In the end, after shnasa shmita, the year after shmita, when Yid didn't have not worked, because most people worked in the field, so they didn't work the whole shmita year. What should they do? Take us They should all gather in the Makamash Yivchar, in the Beis HaMikdash, and it should be read. The Torah should be read.
So I didn't help her with the bracha.
By Moshe Rabbeinu, by the leader, as explained in the profession, in front of all the Yidden, they should be able to hear it. And then in Pasuk Yud Beis, Hakhel es ha'om ha'anashim v'anashim ha'taf. Gather the entire nation, the men, women, and children. Not only them, even the converts. And many Mepharshim translate doesn't mean the converts. It means the goyim who kept 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach and lived in Eretz Yisrael. They too should come. Maybe they're going to want to come a ger, so they should know the halachas. They should know what they're committing to.
That happened afterwards.
What?
When I also
many of them, yeah. Evan Ezra, I think the Ralbag, there are a few.
after 2 months.
L'man yishmu, l'man yilmadu, v'yaru es Hashem lekechem, v'shamaru lasis is called divrei Torah zos. And why the gathering? In order that they should hear and learn to keep this Torah, to keep the Torah that was given on Matan Torah, the Torah that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote, finished writing on the day he passed away.
How are you? Are you okay? All of a sudden. Wow.
So in Hakhel, everybody knows Hakhel means gathering. That's what the name is called. But is that the main thing of Hakhel? So actually, the Rebbe points out that from the halachic perspective, there are different opinions, but from a halachic perspective of the Rambam, that's not the main idea. The main idea is not the gathering. The main point of Hakhel is the Yidden getting together to committing, to strengthening their commitment of what happened at Har Sinai, to strengthening, we'll see in a few minutes, to strengthening their belief, strengthening their Yiras Shamayim that we're going to do what the Eibusha wants us to do. And here it is in one paragraph on page 3, the Hakhel punchline. Mitzvahs Hakhel besteht them as alle verschiedene Sugim. Und die verschiedene Menschen von jeder Sug. That all different kind of Jews, no matter what, where you are, if you're man, woman, or child, or no matter how great you are, how simple you are. And say chachamim delim shreidim kol Torah kula. And say misha eini yachal ishmaya. You could be the man, the Yidden who are the greatest chachamim, or the people who can't even hear, meaning they don't understand. They don't speak Hebrew. Even these people, or their little children, so they also can't hear. These people, Kaddish, the Beis Hamikdash, and for insect in a Nakuda Achas with ein Kavano and Sil, that they all come together for one purpose. What? That we should strengthen our Yiras Shamayim. And the words of the Rambam and the words in bold, that even those people who don't understand, or for example, there's different, the people very far who couldn't hear, even Misha Eini Yachal Yishmaya, this is line number, the third to the last, the fourth line of the Rambam. Shein Yachal Yishmaya Machavin Libe Lekriya. People who can't hear, who can't listen, or either because they don't speak Hebrew, or they're standing too far, or they're too young. They should at least pay attention, focus, look at for example, looking at the king, or just paying attention. The Rebbe explains machava means you should probably just focusing on this idea, that knowing why you're here. Because the whole idea why we get together in the Beis Hamikdash is just to strengthen our Yiddishkeit. And you should see yourself as if you're standing, you're listening from the Eibusher, even though the king is reading, but it's as if the Eibusher himself. Why? Because the king is the shliach of the Eibusher. So if you're listening to the king, it's as if you're hearing it from the Eibusher himself. We're going to read it and just say it outside. The chinuch actually, as the chinuch was also was a rishain. We don't know exactly who he is, but he wrote actually a sefer. He writes in that Akdama. He's writing it for children. The children every single Shabbos, or for every single Shabbos, they should read that. He wants the children with their friends. They should read. They should learn the mitzvahs of that week's parsha. And he writes that he first tells you what the mitzvah is. He explains to you the reason of the mitzvah, and then tells you certain details of the mitzvah. So when it comes to mitzvahs Hakhel, he says that the reason why why Hashem wanted the Eden to get together in Beis Hamikdash is partially because when you have such a big crowd getting together, so people ask, why are we here? Just that question itself, Vatiya Hatshuva, why are we here? Lishmaya divrei Torah. Shehi koli kareinu v'haydenu v'sifartenu. To hear, we're here just to hear the words of Torah. And that itself strengthens is what this aura, this feeling of being together is what strengthens everybody. That's very good, yes? 11 and 3. No time we started? Like 15 minutes ago? 10 minutes ago? Half a guy? I need to know. Because I can skip everything. Don't worry. 15 minutes ago. Okay. Another half hour, 20 minutes. Okay. Okay. Then in this Sikha, which we'll read the first two paragraphs. The reason Rebbe is now going to explain why do we need from every 7 years, why did they even have to get together? You have for bring-ins they could have had. Yeah, they had Piece of Torah 3 times a week. They learned that the Rebbe will give a speech. Why did they have to get together? What was the idea? So in the Sikha, the Rebbe explains that it was to relive Matan Torah, which all the Yidden got together by Matan Torah. It was to relive. It was Moshe Rabbeinu. He's telling Yeshua, I think this should be done. Why was it only every 7 years? So the Rebbe talks about it. The Rebbe basically bases it off a Barbanel, which it has to do with Shemitah, which we won't get into. It's a long Barbanel explaining why it was only every 7 years and not every year, for example. On page 4, Lizman, the reason why we have to relive the Yidden to this talk about in the past. In the base of Mikdash, they would have to get together for a year of Hakhel, skipping the gray. The Chiddush of Matan Torah was, it wasn't just that they heard Moshe Rabbeinu or they heard the Eivishter, it was they saw the Eivishter. And when you see something, it makes it real. We're going to skip to the next page, page 8, to the second paragraph. And because it was so real, when you see something come so real, via Shleimar, on page 5, this is the reason why the generations after Matan Torah, it wasn't enough that the Yidden every single day they should remember about Matan Torah, or that every once a year. Rather, they had to live it. Which is called mitzvah Hakhel. So Kol Yisrael, Nashim V'Taf, they call him Yachad K'nei B'Maimed Har Sinai, and they should see themselves. Every Yidden getting together, and they see themselves as if when they hear the king, it's as if the Eibishter himself is talking. So that is the crux of Hakhel, where they get together for why? To strengthen their Yiddishkeit and to relive Matan Torah. Now you can ask, what is the Chiddush? Every day you're supposed to strengthen your Yiddishkeit. So the Rebbe talks about this actually at length, but here's also a cliff note from a Sikha. The Rebbe brings it in short. What's the Chiddush? You see footnote 62 on page 5. The Rebbe gives an example. Just like every day you're supposed to remember Matan Yetzias Mitzrayim. At the same time, once a year you have Pesach. Bedugmas Neschiras Yetzias Mitzrayim Shechiyu Vayu B'chol Yom. It's extra. We put an extra stress on it on Pesach. From there we gather the strength. We get the strength to be able to relive Yetzias Mitzrayim every single year, every single day. So too, even though it happens only every 7 years, Hakhel. But this gives us strength for the entire, that every day you should live it, and also too the other years too. Now, which is very interesting, it's going to continue now talking about what happened to Hakhel throughout generations. How was Hakhel in the base of Mikdash? There's no account besides one of how Hakhel was in the base of Mikdash. Like people, I was working on something, so the writer, he wanted to know, was it really bigger in the base? Were there talking more Yidden who came up for the year of Hakhel than other years.
About the case at the time, and I think earlier this week.
So I found him, the source was the chinuch that we read before. It says, "Ma'u ha'kibbutz harav hazeh sheniskapsu yachad kulanu." But so it's only exactly. So you can only assume so. We didn't have any proof, but from at least we could, like you said, you could assume so. You see it. It's about pastures. Also, it's different sections. The Rebbe said that the pastures are a lot bigger in the year of Hakhel. A lot more even came. But there's besides one account of a Grifas. He was a great Tzemach Tzedek. There's a different version, but according to them, Tzedek, he was a great grandson of Herdus Hamelech. He was the king then, and he read from the Torah in Shnas Hakhel. And the Mishnah, the Masechah Seita, they describe of how he read it and an interesting anecdote over there. But besides that anecdote, we have, at least what I found, at least what I know, we didn't have anything else. More than that, all the datas from Churban Beis Hamikdash till now, we didn't have anywhere where it says that the Yidden even kept Hakhel, besides one place. That everybody actually brings this as almost every sikh, or at least in the Amara Makim, as showing that you could do a zecher, you could do some kind of remembrance of Hakhel, bringing proof from the Abarbanel, which is on page 5. I brought this down from a footnote of Rebbe's letter. It says the word Hakhel, aktuel, in Alatzite. Those were the words of the Rebbe's letter, and this is a footnote on those words. Laha'ir me Abarbanel al Vayila. The Rebbe said, take notice of what it says in the Abarbanel. Mikan nishar haminhag biyamenu shebiyem hashmini chag ha'aseres ha'achrein nikroim yem simchas Torah shebai bayem anu mashlim es Torah. That on the day, he said, that's because of the mitzvah of Hakhel. That's why, in the time of the Abarbanel, we have a minhag that on Shmini Atzeres, on the last day of Yom Sid, when we finish the entire Torah, the leader of the generation, the leader of the kahal, the leader of the community, Eimed HaGadol Shebekahal, U'Mesayim Mesa, he's the one who finishes the Torah. V'hu ba'as mekeirei mibli turgaman, the no middleman who translates there used to be a middleman. Then there was no person, just someone between explaining what the Rav is talking. He would just read it, Parshas B'Zeis HaBracha, the Dimyon, why? To be just like to Dimyon, how do you translate the Dimyon? What? Yeah, to be similar as Maisa HaMelech is Man Holikiyahu, as especially Getlecha time of how it was Hakhel in the Beis Hamikdash. This is a minhag that we don't have written anywhere else. There's no really source that this, if it happened, besides this, and this happened actually, the Rebbe points out from the Abarbanel, makes it sounds like it happened not just the year of Hakhel, it was every single year. So you see that there was every year the Rav, he was the one who would read B'Zeis HaBracha.
Was identified.
And why? Because of Hakhel. I was speaking to a Belzer friend. I asked him, ever heard of Hakhel? He said, never. Besides the time of the Beis Hamikdash, never heard. Yeah. My wife has friends, she's on a working group of 100 ladies. There are only 3 Lubavitchers. All of them are from. So she told Hakhel, no one ever heard of doing Hakhel these days. It's a novelty of the Rebbe. Actually, the Rebbe points out in R 84, Yedua shebedei shelafanenu haya elu shiratu lasi zeicher lehakel avalei niskalbu b'payil b'tfusay Yisrael. In Tafshin Vav, and so in the Tzaddiks, there's a guy called Haderes, Rabbi something to Umi, what was the name? I forgot right now. And Tumi Rabinowitz, I forgot his name. A great Yid. What? Yeah, he's a great Yid. And so too Rabbi Cook and Rabbi Herzog. A lot of people in the, even this is also touching Yid-Beis after Yisrael came independent. So they wanted to do a Zeichel HaHakhel, and they wrote booklets. It's very interesting. One of their booklets, the Rebbe a lot of times sends you to their booklets, so that they made booklets or Sfanim can trace him. The Rebbe even wrote them a letter. The Rebbe let them print one of his letters about Hakhel. is printed in the beginning of the booklet, a letter from the Lubavitcher Rebbe on Hakhel, which was a chiddush because Hakhel wasn't a thing then. But it wasn't a skab, meaning then it never even they stopped. A few years later, it didn't continue. And one of the reasons I think Rabbi Herzog, I'm almost sure it's him, or Rabbi Cook, I think Rabbi Herzog, he gives the reason why he thinks there was never Hakhel throughout the years. 185 yesh eimim hatam ipnei pachad hamachos sheyachashtu hakalas ha'am l'mid b'machos, because the idea of Hakhel had to do with the king. So it might look like you want to make a revolution, you want to take over, so they were afraid to do it. But the Rebbe says it doesn't answer to the periods of time. It's a good answer, but what about the periods of time when they weren't afraid? Okay, now we're gonna go a little quicker over here. We're not going to be rereading all this. Wherever most things in this booklet have a maramakim, whatever doesn't have a maramakim is from a famous sikha of the Rebbe spoke very strongly in Tashim Memches, Leil Yud Gimel Tishrei, and so to Shabbos Bereshis. They took those two sikhas of Hakhel, they put it together. The Rebbe edited it, and it's in Sefer HaSikhos, page 9. It's a mukhadik sikha. It's a long, very simple sikha. So all these things, all the hard ha'aris that Rebbe in the deep sikhas explaining Hakhel. Over here, everything is more simplified. It's just to get the point of Hakhel and what to practically do. So the Rebbe, exactly. All these things, all these ha'aris are all from that sikha. So for us as a Lubavitcher, we take for granted the idea that every Yid has in himself, that when we say b'seichel einamar b'seichan, that every Yid has a base mikdash in him. The source for that is actually a medrash, but the source that every Yid that there's a veda base mikdash, the Rebbe, at least where the Rebbe sends you to, is the Alter Rebbe. Yeah, the Rebbe sends you that it's the Alter Rebbe. He's the one who told us that you have to. Just like there's a base mikdash in the past, it was destroyed. Every Yid has in himself a base mikdash, and you have to live with it. Yeah? So we take it and we tell it to our children. We talk about it, but it's a basic thing. So too, if Hakhel is something, if the base mikdash, every Yid has a base mikdash in him, that means he also has to live the idea of Hakhel. If you live with the idea of a carbon, live with the idea of Hakhel. So what does it mean living with the idea of Hakhel? Practically, the Rebbe says he wants us to gather. He wants page 7. The second paragraph is in einfache Wörter, in clear put, simple words. Yeah, what I mean to say is, jeder Id man freuen Kind hat zu tun mit noch Iden. Anhebedig von dein eigener Mishpacha. Everybody has to do and has to. Yeah, everybody has to tun mit noch Iden. Everybody has to do with people. The Rebbe didn't say you should do with people. The Rebbe said a fact. Everybody has to do with people. No person doesn't have to do with people. There's a footnote 95 which I didn't cut. The paper, the machine on the computer didn't let me add it in the footnote, so I didn't put it in here. But the Rebbe sends you Tameir Nevuchim, where the Rambam says a person in nature is social. Yeah, Adam b'tevai hu medini. Yeah. So every person has to do with people. Either it's unhebendik, your family, a friend, a neighbor. Was Leben is ein Gegend that are living around you. Mit Arbeiter in seiner Arbeitsort, if it's your work or your colleague at work. Und wenn du gehst zu Tamidim, Chaverim und Tamidis, Chaverais, was lernen mit ihm in der selben Kita, der Yeshiva Kita bei dem. Und bechlal Menschen mit wem jeder kommt in Verbindung Meshach von Tag. Anybody who you meet. What does everyone want you to do? Everyone wants us to go to the last paragraph of page 7. What should you do? You should get together. Best would be in a shul, in a halakha plaza, just like the base of Mikdash, and do two things. An eis nutzen es far, you should utilize the time as follows. Aleph, l'chol reish, verstärken Achtus Yisrael ve'avas Yisrael. Was durch dem, skipping the brackets, come to euch, by us. The first thing is you're getting together, just by coming together, strengthening Achtus and avas Yisrael. You didn't getting together. We're here. No matter if we think different, we act different, but we're here all together. Which, if it's done correctly, what will it lead? To Beis. L'man yishmu, l'man yimudu, v'yarus Hashem alekeichem. V'shamru l'asus is called divrei Torah zeis. Kol hayom asher atem chayim al ha'adama. It will lead to Pashat, strengthening our Yiddishkeit. Durch dem, was alle versammelt, Herren von der Magid Shiur, oder lernen zusammen an Indien und Torah, geben zusammen Stocke, davenen zusammen. By us, all Yidden, by us gathering together, by us getting together automatically, it would, if it's done correctly, it would lead to strengthening our Yiddishkeit. We'll learn more Torah, we'll daven better, we're going to learn together, we'll do something together. In the second, which I didn't quote, the Rebbe actually says, even if it doesn't, even getting together and doesn't bring to learning Torah, is Eichad good. Bringing Yidden together is also important.
Bits in that bag like that.
No, so I'll talk about it. Yes, I've that. Then on page 8, we're going to parastate outside. The Rebbe asks something, which if you look, you go to a website called Hakhel Nation, you could sign up, you could print it out. The Rebbe wants, in the Sikh, the Rebbe explained how the Rebbe asked that he wants every single community on their own, every single school on their own, every single business on their own. Any place where you have Yidden together, they should print out. Our brother, Rebbe said it should be tefach al tefach. Rebbe said how long it should be. That way, if you put them all, if you gather after a while, gather the whole community together, so everybody's cards are the same size. It could look different. And it should be written on the card. You should write on it. You should ask people to write their name. What are they signing up for? I said, teva of a person is that when you write something, if you commit in writing, you'll keep it. Rebbe wants every year to make some kind of hakel. Rabbi Lou's father-in-law got a little sharp answer from the Rebbe. This is in the end of the year of Hakhel, of one of the years. Rebbe asked, "How's your health?" And then I know what it's talking about. Rebbe says, "Hey, Reish Kuf Daled Harakid Ba'Geula." I know what that means. He danced during the Gula. But then the Rebbe asked, "Did you at least do once this year? Did you at least once do one Hakhel? And so too for your wife, has she done at least one Hakhel for women?" And in the Sechel, Rebbe goes in detail. Once a teacher should get his children, not only should make a Hakhel in his class at least once a month, he should get his children, they should make a Hakhel at home. And he should give them ideas what they should talk about. The Rebbe, in this Sechel, the Rebbe says, idea, it should be sets. That way it's more real. It's more, for example, the Rebbe writes, that's the word the Rebbe says. The Rebbe says, so number one, first, when you write something down, it's more real. Number two, when everybody writes things down together and you put it on a piece of, at least that's how I'm understanding, you put it, everybody know it's going to be put on a bulletin board or something. Yeah. It gets you to do it, and it gives them more of a chayas. Right. And then another thing, Rebbe said, on the card you should make a checkbox. The person should write their name, their mother's name. The reason for that is because the Rebbe said, I'm talking to people who aren't from also. You should get people who aren't from, they should make a hakhel with their family, with another yid. And that way you get them to write, even if they don't call themselves by their Jewish name, you get them at least on the paper, they should write their Jewish name. So they'll remember their Jewish name. And you should have a checkbox that you should give permission that you could call them, or these days email them, to remind them to do it. We're going to end we'll end over here. The Rebbe Osha actually is very interesting. Bottom of 9, the Rebbe during the year of Memches, Tash Memches, the Rebbe spoke very, very strongly, like 5-6 times in 1 week. The Rebbe has 5-6 sechas. Every sech the Rebbe mentioned that you should have anashim, nashim, betaf, and the person himself. So in this michta, and the Rebbe usually sends you to this michta Klali, where he speaks about it. He says it more in detail. And the idea of it is that every person, and what's anashim in a person? A man is usually on the strength. He does something with a takeif. A woman takes care of in-home, meaning take care of yourself, work on yourself. And also, the man also takes care of that. Is the idea he's the one who goes to work, so you should take care of the people around him. And what's a child? A child is a makabel. So everyone wants us to work on ourselves also, but we should listen to others. Yeah, we should be a makabel to others. Also in Aveda, exactly, the person himself. We'll end off with 2 more things. On page 11, there's this person I haven't met him in person, but from his letters that he has printed, he wrote to the Rebbe, it sounds like a very special person. For example, in Tashma Ches, he wrote to the Rebbe for a birthday, if you can meet the Rebbe in Yechidus. So the Rebbe, for a birthday, if you can have a private Yechidus with the Rebbe, and the Rebbe, I remember just the beginning of the answer was minhage. There's keep the minhagim of the Emiledis. But so this person, look what he writes to the Rebbe on page 11. His name is Reb Shol Moshe Alitov. He's a shliach, I think, in Argentina. Advar echad shegadam litz was, okay, not anymore. Okay, he's a yid that lives in Eretz Yisrael. Advar echad, what? Advar echad shegadam litz sar rav shelo yachalti ledaber imei mekem sheze shnas Hakhel nigashti ledaber imei v'sati leneshika dehaya moed kasha avuri. This year shnas Hakhel, I was the yid who made me a lot of pain, who did something very nice to me. And it's hard for me to talk to him. I went over to him, I spoke to him, I even gave him a kiss. And it's something which is something very hard for me to do. No, this is what the guy wrote to the Rebbe. The Rebbe response is what's in bold. I received it, thank you very much. And you should continue sending me in the future such beautiful things. Yeah, and even more, I want to hear you do more such stuff. Ask Erla. See, and I'm going to mention this to my father-in-law. And then the Rebbe gave him $2 in connection to this. On the last page 12, I just made a likud of some of the things. Yeah, this is. Yeah. And when the Rebbe spoke about this Hakhel, Sivas Hashem, which we are Davar Pash, we all had Sivas Hashem. Sivas Hashem started because of Shnas Hakhel. The idea of dancing in the street also was Shnas Hakhel. And there are many other things that ever started in Shnas Hakhel. Exactly, Yemiledis started Shnas Hakhel. I haven't yet. I started looking if the Rebbe uses the word Hakhel, but in the end of Memches, the Rebbe didn't really use the word Hakhel in the end of Memches too much. So because it was V'chaytil Liba, the Rebbe moved to what? Okay, so the Shiur officially is literally over. Everybody should do some kind of Hakhel, whatever you could do. Some examples the Rebbe gives in Hakhel is to strengthen your Yiddishkeit. Pasha to learn Shulchan Aruch. The Rebbe says learn Beis Yosef, learn Shulchan Aruch. Another thing, daven with the minyan. You're gathering together. Those are some examples.
It's interesting, the union of